people live and work, and this is our next development on from there, so you can take this to any time, any place type of event. You can see on the logo on there, we're using the new CIPD logo, which is all about communication. The letter P has gotten a speech mark forming the shape of the P. So with that in mind, we will start with the presentation. But please use the box in the bottom right-hand corner. Put any comments, any questions. Richard's job this afternoon is to sit here and point at it when something comes up so that I can then go to it and respond straight away, which I will endeavour to do. Right. But if you haven't met me before, you haven't been to one of these, or you haven't been to one of our events, I thought it's useful to just give you a little bit of information about me. I started my HR career in 1981. I started working in the NHS, which is in Yorkshire, based in Harrogate. I did my CIPD qualifications, or though they were called IPM qualifications at the time. Then went off working around the world. The only part of the world I haven't worked in is South America. I then came back into the UK, became a National Training Awards Ambassador, joined the committee of the North Yorkshire branch of the CIPD, and for the last 5 years I've been the branch chair. I set up my own business 10 years ago, and from there, called Abeceda. It's Latin, it means to put into logical order or deal with the rudiments of a subject. And over those 10 years, we have developed information products and services which help employers to do that. So we now have a lot of editorial comment on the websites. We have our product shop, which is Workplace Learning Centre, where you'll see the products, which are the only products the Simpsons organization have approved for business-to-business sales. And we use the Simpsons characters to educate people about health and safety. Homer Simpson being the world's least competent yet most famous health and safety manager. And we just developed H2R, which is our own employee management software, which we were demonstrating at the CIPD's Northern Area Partnership Conference, which is being held in York in June. You're very welcome to attend. Tickets are available from the CIPD website. Getting patchy sound from some of you, so I will move the microphone a little bit closer, and hopefully you'll be able to hear me a little bit better. If you don't, then please let me know. Right, so workplace democracy. What we're going to do is, oh, I touched the button. Right, there we go. Touch the button. This is what we're going to look at this afternoon. First of all, I wanted to explain what workplace democracy is, dispel some of the myths, look into the history of workplace democracy, where it's come from, how it developed. Look at what makes the time right for workplace democracy, because this is this presentation is a follow-on from the presentation I did earlier in the year, looking at predictions for HR for 2015. So what makes the time right? What makes workplace democracy work? It is not that simple and straightforward to implement. And then we'll also look at what the limitations of, what limits the success of workplace democracy and some of the things to avoid. So quite a lot of information to go through. I say, if there's any points that come up which you would like me to expand upon, any questions you'd like to ask, then please just put the question in the bottom right-hand box. Richard is here to point that out to me as I follow my slides and my notes, and we will try and address them as we go through. Okay. Now, what is workplace democracy? What is workplace democracy? Well, in simple terms, a lot of people just assume that it is, and it actually is, adapting some of the features of democracy, but applying them to the workplace. So we can have votes, we can have debates, we can have participation, we can have decision-making systems. We can do all sorts of things which make people who work in an organization feel more involved in the decisions which are made about their work in that organization. Sounds very simple, very straightforward. Large companies encouraged to feel, in larger companies, the employees are made to feel like they own the organization. This can be through share ownership schemes, it can be through objectives, it can be through measurements of work and taking, like, instead of looking to me as your manager to tell you what your objectives should be, you tell me as the employee, as the person responsible for this work, what it is that you can do. Right? How can you contribute to the overall success of the organization? You tell me. It's a basic form. Smaller organizations, they sometimes think that every decision has got to be made by committee and put off the idea of introducing any form of workplace democracy at all. The smaller the organization, the more control a founder is likely to want to have, the manager is likely to want to have. There is a reluctance for entrepreneurs to create entrepreneurial cultures within their own organizations. Talk about it for organizations other than theirs, but won't actually want to create that within their own organization. Total control is important. And yet, there is a lot of evidence that says that putting together a little bit of entrepreneur within your workforce alongside an entrepreneur will create a much more dynamic, much more flexible type of organization. There is a middle ground to be had between the organizations where employees are encouraged to feel ownership and smaller organizations where employees are made to feel that you are working here, you do as you are told. The two-way element of it is you need to have participatory management. Managers at all levels of an organization need to be involved in the democratic process. There is no point in having someone at the top of the organization saying, we are going to do this, and then have somebody at the bottom of the organization in terms of management structure saying, it's not going to happen in my department. The biggest obstacles found when you go into the research of organizations that have tried and failed is the resistance does not come from employees. It comes from first line and middle managers who see their own position being eroded by having to communicate and listen to the people that they have working in their departments. One of the things we've seen happen over the last few years is the rise of coaching as a management style, coaching as a development tool, and mentoring as a development tool as well. Those fit very well with a workplace democracy because they're about getting people to find the solutions to the issues themselves and to make sure that they're actually building a solution which will work for the organization, for them, something they can take ownership of. And of course, we all know that when somebody takes ownership of a decision, it's more likely to get implemented as well. Okay. But employee ownership can be a key feature of workplace democracy. Now, I have worked in organizations in industries where stock options and those sorts of things were a key feature of the employee benefits package. I've also seen how people have used them as a means of just making money, and there's nothing wrong with that. But it's very difficult to link ownership of shares in an organization to the individual's own performance. So you have to be careful about what you describe as employee ownership. It's not necessarily just, oh, you have shares in the organization, or you receive a profit share every year, which is another form of employee ownership. It is about the processes, the tasks, owning the responsibility, owning the job that you do, deciding what it is that you're going to do to make sure that you are a success. That's what we mean when we talk about ownership. Okay. Now, have any of you got anything within your organizations which is similar to what I've just described there as workplace democracy? Mm-hmm. Just wait through for some of that typing to come through. Ooh. Right, it's going to be quite a lot of reading happening at this end whilst we do all this typing, but all right, so it's interesting using focus groups for significant change in the same sort of way as an organization might do when they're launching a new product, Natalia, or is like using it slightly differently? Right. Works councils, we're going to come on and discuss the works councils in a minute, the European Works Councils directives. Forums. Helen, can you explain a little bit more about what you mean about forums? And product systems, right, reward review. So you're doing all sorts of things to include employees within decision making, within the way in which well, things are decided. Right. Okay. This is not completely new to you, to a lot of you then. Right. Is there anyone in here in the webinar who's not got any form of what I've just described in terms of workplace democracy within their organization? Yeah. All right. Right. So Carol's not got anything yet. Jane, not anything yet. So we've got quite a good balance of pe- people who've got something and people who don't have anything at all yet. Right. I think there will be quite a move from employees towards greater involvement within the businesses they work for, from the point of view that more people would want to take responsibility for something that is happening within their organization. People no longer want to feel done to, from what I'm seeing in the research that we're doing at Abacida at the moment. They're much more interested in being actively involved. The Health and Safety Committee, that sounds very interesting, Carol, but there is a legal requirement for organizations to discuss health and safety with their employees and make sure there are systems for allowing employees to identify near misses and hazards and risks. But that is a good framework to start from. As soon as you can get people talking about something, I think it's a way of getting them more involved in the business itself. Fewer people are just wanting to turn up and do a job, want to get involved in it because where you work says a lot about you as an individual nowadays. Right. Okay, let's go on and look at the history of workplace democracy as well, because one of the best forms of workplace democracy I think that we have that exists is the rise of the trade unions as those people organizations developed, and creation of collective agreements. Those collective agreements were a form of workplace democracy. We're not seeing quite so many of them now, but the power of the trade unions was a method of workplace democracy because it allows employers to speak to a small group of representative employees in order to gauge what the employees wanted. So that's a form of employee workplace democracy. The cooperative organizations, those some of them elect bosses and jobs would rotate. Another one of those would be the John Lewis Partnership. Waitrose is John Lewis, Ocado, or those sorts of things, where employees have very direct ownership of the organization. There have been all sorts of different things happening within workplace democracy, but the first time that it really got established as anything was the EU Directive on Employee Information and Consultation, which formed the Employee Works Councils. I have seen this described in the press, the HR press and the general press, when I've done research. It's all like just a little bit of a damp squid. I can remember when it came in and everybody was very worried about what it would mean, how are we going to adapt to it, what have we got to do, and yet it was become something which was a lot of like the year 2000 computer bugs which were going to be going on. Just going to read something about what's happening in Spain. Yeah, my understanding about Spain is you have the trade unions in Spain are a little bit more influential than they are in the UK. Right. That is a good point, Carol, there about trade unions that only represent their members, the people that have paid their fees. Although from an employer's perspective, you really want an organization or someone who is going to represent everyone. And so trade unions can be involved in employee workplace democracy, but if people choose not to join, then you have a bit of an issue. The key thing about workplace democracy and the history of it is it's developed after about communication. It's a way of more organizations wanting to develop communication links with employees and get them more involved. And that's one of the key things that we've seen over the last 10 to 15 years, more organizations wanting to consult with their employees. The active consultants is one of the terms that we've seen, is managers proactively consulting with employees before decisions are made. The communicators, the more are the people who communicate every decision to the employees after they've been made, and see that as workplace democracy. But as we all know, if you get people's opinions about a decision you're likely to make, you make a better decision, you get them bought into it and more effectively, and then they're able to offer a much more committed enactment of that decision. There are organizations that have employee board members. I suppose one of the main organizations or types of organizations that do that is schools. Most schools have, well, all schools have a governing body. On that governing body, there will be a staff governor. That is a form of employee board member. The board of governors is responsible for the strategic direction and strategic decisions within the school, and parents, governors, teacher governors, staff governors all have a contribution to pay in that. Right? The employees share ownership. I have benefited from employee share ownership schemes in some of the organizations that I've worked for, but I've never seen how that share ownership was linked to my own performance, and the price of those shares, their value, was linked to my performance. So I have a little bit of a doubt about whether that actually contributes to workplace democracy, but or workplace employee performance. From workplace democracy perspective, if you own part of the company, you are logically more interested in its success. It is a little bit one of those things that ties you to the organization until either your shares deliver a result or your stock options come to fruition and you can cash them in. But employee engagement, which is one of the HR buzzwords that we have around at the moment, is one of the things that is mainly employer-led. There is an awful lot of organizations and consultants and academics that are talking about how do we get employees engaged in our organizations more, because an engaged employee is more effective, more productive, more loyal, puts the extra bit of effort and time in. So how do we get more employees engaged in our own organizations in the same way as people may be engaged with a brand that they are very loyal to, whether that's a Levi's or Coca-Cola over Pepsi. Some people would avoid a cola drink if it's Pepsi, but they want to drink Coca-Cola. Or how do we engage with people, with employers in the same way as teenagers engage with their favorite pop groups, the One Direction type of thing. Now, you should be able to sort of see where your organization is in relation to those. If you've just got relationships with the trade union, you're at early stages. If you've tried in, some sort of workers' council, you're a little bit further on. How are you developing your communication with your employees? Is it just you talk to them when you've made a decision? Are you going out and surveying them in the same sort of way as you might do if you were doing market research with customers? And what involvement do your employees have in the development of your business and things like board members, share ownership? How would you describe your employee engagement? I've just felt a beep in sound in my headphones, so does that mean something I should be worried about, Richard? Oh, more people joining us. All right. Okay. Right. We've got some people typing away at the moment with some comments, so we'll just wait for those to come through in the system, and then we will move on. Any questions or any comments you have about the history of workplace democracy and where you are in that history will be very interesting. All right. Oh, it's very unfortunate. Was there a particular reason why you weren't allowed to do a survey? Right. How does your employee representative council work, Jane? Mm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. If the company doesn't do them, then you have a little bit of a culture problem to get over, or culture challenge. Um, it is very important, I think, as we go forward, where people are being asked their opinions all the time. Where you have a meal in a restaurant, people are getting used to going onto social media, saying what it was like, going onto TripAdvisor, used to having their opinions listened to. You could end up with the one place where their opinion isn't listened to is at work, and that's somewhere where people spend an awful lot of time, and the less likely they are to have their opinion listened to at work, the more likely that they are to voice it elsewhere. And if they voice it elsewhere, then you're more likely to find recruitment problems and all this sort of stuff. We've all been there, Carol, but with hindsight, with hindsight, it can, it looks a lot smaller. It's just a way of chipping away at it one very small piece at a time, using examples from other organizations to see how these things can be changed. And look at what your competitors are doing and what makes them successful. Right. This collectivism, so what Jane is saying is like if different companies within the group have a member sit on the council, bring together ideas. Very useful way of sort of identifying common issues, common successes, common challenges, identifying what people have done last year that met the challenge that you're meeting this year. So you're very welcome, Carol. It's what I'm here for. At least that's what I like to think. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Thank you. Let's go on and look at what makes workplace democracy work. I think that the first thing is that people need to understand what democracy is. I have a Vodafone and phoned them up in the customer services desk because I had a problem. Very rare occurrence, I will say, with Vodafone. He said with his tongue in his cheek. But the guy that I spoke to was called Mohammed, and I asked him whereabouts he was based. He said, I'm in Egypt. Vodafone have a very big presence in Egypt with call centers, which I thought was very interesting. This was shortly after all the changes in Egypt and the introduction of democracy. So I asked him if he'd been involved in what had happened. And he said, yes, he'd been in the square. So I said, how's it going? He said, well, this democracy, it's a bit tricky. All the people do is moan and complain and argue. And I said, that's what democracy is. If you want to have people involved in democracy at work, they need to understand what it actually is, how their role is that they can play, and how it works. If it doesn't work, then you end up with them trying to introduce something slightly different. As with everything else in HR, in employment, there's very little you can do unless you get the people at the top to sign up to it, and sign up and be seen to sign up to it, and being seen to put it into practice. I already mentioned that the research we've done has identified that where this fails, it fails with managers lower down the ranks who see it as a way of eroding their position and their authority, whereas actually what it does is strengthen their authority and strengthens their role as managers in that they provide things which enable people to do their jobs, but this gets people saying what they need to do their job, how they need to be managed, what it is they need to do to move forward. Right? There's a very old saying that actually the people who know how to do a job are the ones that are doing it. The ones who know how to improve a job are the people themselves. Right? How can we communicate? I've been asked what happens. I mean, the actual issues about democracy and the commitment from the top. It is very difficult if you are trying to communicate something to someone who doesn't want to be communicated to. Um, Essentially, we talked about the entrepreneurs earlier on and the senior managers who know what they know. That's what's got them to the top. An awful lot of managers don't see the need for them to do any more training, any more learning. But the one type of person that they will learn from is a manager that they respect, someone else who they see as having done it before. I have spoken to an awful lot of people that run their own businesses who are very impressed by the people that they see on programs like Dragon's Den, The Apprentice, people like Richard Branson, Stelios from EasyJet, all these types of names. What you need to do is to research those people, get their autobiographies, the books that they've written, the how-to books, the Jack Walsh books, for example. Ben E. Hindmarsh is the guy who was the number 2 at GE to Jack Walsh. He was his counsel, the solicitor, who played number 2 at GE during GE's heyday. He wrote a book about how to get high performance with high values. It is a really, really good book. It's published by Harvard Business Press and McGraw-Hill. And basically he outlines in that book, which is not too long, about how he took the values of someone who was prepared to go on protest marches in the 60s, realized that the way to change the world was not to protest, but to get involved with the corporate world because the corporate world actually controls the world, and actually change it, and took the values from his student protest days into the corporate world and said, if it's not right here in New York, then it's not right in York, and it's not right in Lagos, it's not right in Beijing, it's not right in Saigon, and put together values and looked at how you do that in order to generate higher levels of performance and getting employees involved in that. Those are sort of books, again. The author's name is Ben E. Hindmarsh. I believe I've reviewed the book on michaelmillward.co.uk. If I haven't, I will send you all the information later on this afternoon about it. I will check out the title of the book and the references, all this sort of stuff. But it's finding those things that the person you're trying to influence will listen to, because they're not going to listen to you because they pay your salary every month. Find the person that they will listen to. You can't always get a telephone call with them, but you can get the books that they've written. You can follow them on Twitter. You can link things into conversations that you have with them, that you have with your managers. Find out what Richard Branson has said on Twitter, the quotes that he's requoted, the people that he lists as following. and then drop those into conversations with people that you're trying to influence, and you influence by association with the person that they respect. You've done the reading. Gain the credibility from that. Right? Part of this that actually is coming out from what you're saying, Carol, is that you need to have a common purpose for the democratic processes. You need to have the management team on board. You need to have the managers on board and the employees on board. You need to see this as something that is of value. No point in trying to introduce it until people do, but you also need to have shared objectives. What is the purpose that we've got of doing this? How are we going to measure the success of it? And is there a point where we'll say this hasn't worked or we need to do something differently? And you're very open and honest with everybody that is involved in it from that respect. No point in doing something and saying we are going to do this to you as our employees. It has to be done as a collective operation. We are governed by a government, but that government governs us with our permission. We have elected them. And although you won't be electing managers, you will be making decisions that contribute to the decision-making process. Individuals will be making more decisions about the way in which they work and also what it is that they're able to offer to the organization. Now, I'm a firm believer that you cannot expect people to change unless you train them. So many different linked words there. You cannot expect people to change unless you train them to adapt to how the new behavior that you want them to adopt. So if you're going to introduce a workplace democracy program, you need to introduce training which explains what that means. You dispel the myths, you dispel the assumptions, the conclusions that the grapevine will give people because you have explained it clearly and concisely. And although you can explain it to someone, you can't make them understand it. So you need at the same point in time to have some mechanism which ensures that you have got everyone understanding, not just understanding from their perspective, but a shared understanding of how it will work. And then use every single communication method that you have at your disposal. Posters, newsletters, internal websites. If people are on Twitter, if they're on Facebook, if they're on LinkedIn, use those mechanisms as well so that you have a presence of the organization in there. And that might only be that you monitor what people are saying on Twitter. You monitor what people are saying on Facebook. If they don't want you to follow them, they don't want you to follow them. But if you provide them with a forum within those networking organizations to voice their opinions, you'll find that they're much more constructive about it than if they're just simply, no, we're not interested, and then they go off to the pub. Well, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter are the 21st century's version of the conversations people have in the corridors, in the car parks, in the pubs, in the supermarkets. They're expressing their frustrations. The key thing is that alongside, can you just go back? Sorry. Alongside what makes workplace democracy work is you cannot expect it to happen, just happen. It has to be something that you put into practice and you make sure it works and you train people how to make it work. Those are the key things. Okay, if anybody got any questions or comments about that, does it tie in with those experiences of the people who've got some element of workplace democracy in their business? Okay, we will take that as yes and move on to what limits the success of workplace democracy. Okay. Following on from what we've just said, forcing employees to participate in democratic activities is going to mean that they'll put their hands up and say, I'm not going to do it. Forcing people doesn't really work. We're not forced to go and vote on the 7th of May, but that doesn't stop us from complaining about the outcome on the 8th, although if the outcome of 2010 is anything to go by, it might actually be August before we know who's going to be living in number 10. But forcing people to participate is not going to work. We already mentioned earlier on about trade unions and trade unions representing their members. It is a mistake to assume that your trade unions will welcome workplace democracy. The trade unions have their own power structures, their own hierarchies, and there are ways and means in which things happen. If you have workplace democracy, you could be perceived by the trade union to be setting up a structure which will compete with them and their membership fees, he said, being slightly cynical, especially as workplace democracy does have an element of reducing conflict between managers and employees. And the ownership of work and jobs means that it also can reduce absenteeism. It will improve job quality, performance. So if you have less conflict in an organization, people can perceive that you have less need for a trade union. Right? Being selective on what information you share can limit the success of the democratic project, but oversharing can also cause problems with the project as well. You need to agree beforehand what types of information will be shared, what type of processes there will be for decisions around those, feedback for those, and when you get something that you don't like, don't then shout the person down. Take the feedback, take the information, and ask for it to be expanded upon. If you get something you don't like from people and you react negatively, you will then, well, you are less likely to get the positive feedback or any feedback next time. Right? This operating of the policies in isolation. There is no point in having a democratic work or trying to create a democratic workplace and then having a policy somewhere in the back of your manual which says that people are not allowed to do X, Y, or Z, whatever it might be. You've got to go back and review all of your employment policies, all of your contracts of employment, all of the things that have become custom and practice, and make sure that they link in with your newfound values of being a democratic workplace. If you don't, you can have all sorts of issues come up because you have conflicts of interest or conflicts of decisions being made between one part of the organization and another. Right? I've already mentioned not listening to employees. It's supposed to be two-way communication. You can talk to them, but you've also got to allow them to talk to you, and you've got to take the feedback and value each piece of feedback that you get, because the more you value it, the more you respond to it, the more you act on it, the more you take what you've been given and say, okay, we will take that on board and review it, the more you are likely to get. And the more feedback you get, the more engaged and committed your employees will be to the process and to you as employers as well. Right? Mentioned earlier on about how line managers can be the big stumbling block because they perceive that having a democratic workplace will erode their authority and damage their position. You need to demonstrate to them that they are a key part of the process, that they are key to the communication, key to the two-way aspects of the communication, and also key to the way in which information is presented to senior managers, as well as the implementation of the decisions that senior managers make. They are key to the role. And it all comes down to it, there are politicians at the moment who will be saying things in relation to the general election which commentators, journalists, people on Newsnight, etc., will say that they're disregarding or devaluing or not respecting the electorate. That is one of the big errors that any politician can make at a time now where we're looking at having a hung parliament, so to speak. You have to respect your employees in the same way as the voters need to be respected by politicians. If you trust them, allow them to demonstrate that they are trustworthy, you will get a much better element or a much better participation from them that leads to more engagement, more commitment, higher productivity, higher attendance, lower absence, etc. Now, those are some things, but they all tend to focus around basically this last thing of trusting your employees to actively participate within the project. So have you, the ones who've gone through introduced some form of workplace democracy, have you experienced any of those issues and how have you resolved them? Or is it a little bit soon for some of you to have seen those types of issues yet? All right. Well, let's move on then to our conclusions about this. Workplace democracy is a way of giving employees a voice, which is one of the key drivers of employee engagement, which is one of the big trends at the moment in employee management from an HR perspective. Lots of things from the government and previous governments about increasing employee engagement because it increases productivity. Okay? Workplace democracy is not about transferring decision-making powers from managers to employees, but it is about involving employees, listening to people's opinions, their experiences, what they think about a potential decision and what that will mean for them, and then using that information to create a better informed decision which is more likely to be successful. Okay. Workplace democracy cannot be successful if it is not valued by both employers and employees. There has to be something that comes out of this that is of value for both of them. And remember that very often people don't change jobs because they aren't being paid enough. Right? They change jobs because they're not being trained, because they don't feel involved, because they feel like they're being just used by an employer. The employers that value their employees and demonstrate the value of their employees to those people are the ones that have lower turnover, the ones that are more productive because their people are more productive. Right? Workplace democracy does not replace existing collective forms of employee representation like trade unions. It adds to it. There is nothing for your trade union to worry about as long as they get actively involved. If they're dead against it, as Carol says in her message here, then they can only fail as a result of their lack of involvement, because the employees will generally see the workplace democracy as providing something which the trade union can't. It is their employees' opinion. It isn't tainted by a viewpoint from a trade union which has its own agenda. And workplace democracy will reduce disciplinaries and grievance cases, but it will not prevent them altogether. You still need to have a process for dealing with those. I am looking at the clock now and realizing that I have overrun a little bit, but I think that's because we involved people a little bit along the line. We had a little bit of workplace democracy. If there are any questions or comments, please use the box at the bottom and we'll do our best to try and answer those questions for you today. If not, then we can't. Then we can go off and do some research and find the answers for you. We've got some people typing now, so we'll just let them put that their question in, and then we could just go back over some of the other things. Thank you very much, Cara. I'm very pleased about that. I look forward to hearing how you implement it and how your plans go. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. All right. Okay, there are my contact details. If you would like to get in touch with me, there is the link there for abacida.com, my website, and also WPLC, where you'll find all the learning resources that we do. My Twitter handles are at Abacida and at Workplace Learn, and I'm also on LinkedIn. I can never remember the handle, but you'll be able to see my name there and trace me back. But thank you very much, everyone, for your time. It's been very interesting. Your comments have informed the discussion an awful lot. I just got some more coming through at the moment. Thank you very much, Jane. Really enjoyed your comments and look forward to seeing you again. When we look at the next prediction in more detail, which was about how information technology is being used by HR people to improve employee relations and productivity. There's some more people coming through with some comments as well. Okay. We'll wait for these comments to come through. Thank you, Ashley. Appreciate the feedback. It's a never-ending challenge, Twitter and LinkedIn, Carol, but I look forward to linking with you on there as well. Thank you very much. I hope you all have a good afternoon. See you again for the next one. Thank you.
Thanks, Michael. Yeah, and to follow up on quite a few of people's comments, is very informative. I think quite a lot of us obviously have learned a lot from here. Just the only thing that's left for me to mention are the forthcoming webinars. Next week we've got Marie Walsh with employment law, and then the week after that we have Paul Addy talking about people culture and and how to go around it. So that'll be Paul's and another new presenter to the team. So should hopefully be a very informative webinar. So there are more webinars on our website. So if you do want to have a look at that, and then obviously book on for there. And as always, we will be updating the calendar as we go, and we'll be sending around the monthly email to advise of any new webinars. So obviously Michael will be on that a bit later with the prediction too. So all that's left for me to say now is thank you very much for your time, and hopefully you'll have an enjoyable rest of the day. Hopefully we'll see you again soon. Thank you.
The leader has turned lecture off, and your lines have been unmuted.